Dick Joy. Hickam Field is undergoing its second attack. The A-20s and the P-40s are destroyed, dead here on the ground. The hangars set afire in the first attack are still burning.
It was 50 years ago today that the Empire of Japan launched its surprise attack on the Pacific Fleet and military installations at Pearl Harbor. By the time it was over, more than 2,300 soldiers and sailors were dead, 1,200 civilians killed or wounded, 19 ships sunk, and 150 planes destroyed on the ground. It signaled the end of America's efforts to remain neutral in the face of growing global conflicts and our entry into World War II. 5 Middle Georgians were at Pearl Harbor on that fateful day. Today we'll look at some historic film of the attack and relive their experiences.
Welcome to Close Up. Today, another discussion designed to give you an in-depth understanding of issues affecting our community and our area. Here is Channel 13's Executive Editor, Bill Tribble.
With us today to discuss their experiences at Pearl Harbor 50 years ago are C.A. Butterworth of Macon, who was aboard the USS Pennsylvania, Ed Greenup of Macon, assigned to the Army's Schofield Barracks, Glenn Johnson of Macon, aboard the survey ship USS Sumner, Ezra Hall, who's now a resident of the Georgia War Veterans Home, who was assigned to an anti-aircraft battery in Honolulu, and Vesta Harp, who arrived at Pearl Harbor shortly after the attack got underway. Mr. Butterworth, you were on the Pennsylvania, which was the flagship of the fleet, and it was in dry dock when the Japanese struck. When did you first become aware that something was amiss, something was going on?
Well, we just had breakfast, and I was down in my bunk down on the third deck. Gerard come running in there. He was a sailor from a B division, and he yelled, "The Japs are bombing Pearl Harbor. They're hitting Fort Island. They're bombing Fort Island." And somebody said, "Oh, horse baloney." And I looked at him and I says, "No, the man's telling the truth," because you could see by his face that he was not lying. And about that time, everybody began to move. I slipped my shoes on and started from my general quarters station, and they sounded air defense.
Okay, Mr. Greenup, you were at the Army's Schofield Barracks, back over towards the center of the island, were you not? What were you doing when the attack was launched, and what was your first recollection of the attack starting?
Well, I was standing in the chow line as usual on a Sunday morning, and behind me was another soldier named Maddox, who was just transferring to the Air Force. When these planes come over, we all thought, except Maddox, that they were the Navy having maneuvers. And he said, "No way, that's not the Navy, that's Japanese." And we immediately went to our stations. I picked up my pack and went to the motors pool to get my weapons carrier. And we loaded that, and off we went to our assigned placement and mooring mast, EVA mooring mast base, down near the Dole Pineapple Factory.
Okay, and Mr. Johnson, you had the good fortune of putting into port at Pearl Harbor aboard the survey ship Sumner for some repairs when the attack occurred. Tell us about your first experiences at Pearl Harbor as the attack got underway.
Well, several of us was in the supply office, which was on top side, reading the paper. And we heard the explosions. Hickam Field had a couple of mock air raids a few days previous, and someone suggested they're having another one. And then we heard a loud explosion, and we ran out to the starboard side of the ship, and a Japanese plane came right down at almost deck level, and turned his head briefly, and we recognized right then that it was no air raid, no mock air raid. And by that time, general quarters had sounded, And we later found out these planes, there were several of them, came down alongside the ship. They were headed for Battleship Row. And our ship knocked down the first plane of the attack.
Okay, now Mr. Hall, you were with an Army anti-aircraft battery, which was stationed over across Pearl Harbor there close to Honolulu. And tell us what happened. What were you doing when the Japanese hit Pearl Harbor on December the 7th?
Well, on a Sunday morning, breakfast was from 7 to 8. And I was just walking out of the mess hall when the Japs attacked, and I heard the first bomb drop. And our first sergeant came rushing into there. We were all out there looking at it. We thought, too, that it was maneuvered. Although we were in the field, they called us in to stand our aloha parade for a big dignitary going back to the States.
This is you on the left in this picture, isn't it, Mr. Hall?
That's right.
Okay, that's one of your buddies in
That's
the mess hall
cook.
you're talking
Naturally,
about.
I got him with the cook.
Uh-huh. So what happened then?
Well, the first sergeant, the NCOs, first 3 graders, had barracks across the parade ground. And the first sergeant came rushing in. We were still in civilian clothes. And all the rest of us just out there policing up with all we'd had to done that morning on Sunday. And he yelled, "There's a damn war on." Well, he was in World War I, which for a lot of our non-coms had 15, 20 years. And when he yelled that, he yelled, "Take cover." Well, naturally, even the rifle racks was locked, and the charge of quarters unlocked the rifles, and each man got his gun. We went out there then, and 50 caliber machine guns and that, and 30 caliber. Well, during the attack, we moved out to Iowa, just across the road, up in a sugarcane field there in Pineapple. And you could see it all, but we didn't lose but 2 men out of an outfit. We realized there was a war on then, but we thought at first it was maneuvered.
Uh-huh. A lot of people seem to have had that impression when that attack first occurred. Mr. Harp, you were in the Quartermaster Corps, I believe.
Right.
And you were aboard a ship that was en route to Pearl Harbor.
Right.
And your ship came into Pearl Harbor just after that attack.
Sure did.
Tell us about that now. What
Well,
happened?
it came into Pearl Harbor just after it, and so Captain Flint told us, say, everybody get up and go out and look out there at what's been happening. So when we got up and went out there, it just looked like it had totally world up.
Was the attack still underway when you folks came up from below
No, because
decks?
we slept right in the Jap Gap, Pearl Harbor Gap. So they told us that next morning. We slept there that night when we landed there. We went up from Vancouver, Washington, and got in there sometime that night, but I don't know what time it was because we were sleeping. So the captain of the ship I went up on, when he got there, when we were going in there, he told us, he said, "I tell you the truth, I got scared tonight." And so we asked him, said, "What?" Said, "The Japs come right over that plane, and all of y'all was laying up on deck there, sleep." Said, "And I switched off everything to keep from picking up anything where they could drop a bomb on you." So, but nothing didn't move. So I thought I know that if he'd heard, picked up the signal, he'd dropped the bomb right down on all of y'all and killed everyone there and sunk you.
So you folks were back in an area in the dark, and they just didn't see you when
Right,
they came
that's
in.
right, that's right.
Mr. Butterworth, the Pennsylvania we mentioned earlier was the flagship of the Pacific Fleet, and it was in dry dock. That made it impossible to move that ship, didn't it?
That's correct. We were the only major ship to have ever fought a major engagement on dry land. And our admiral was not aboard at the time, Admiral Kimball. He was downtown playing golf, they say. But anyhow, we were in for repairs, and it was the first time that the Navy had ever taken a ship in dry dock with a full load of ammunition aboard.
Now we're seeing here on this historic video that we have to go with our program the arrival of the first flight wave of the Japanese aircraft. Some of this is film shot by the Japanese newsreel people. Most of it was shot by the Americans on the ground. Was the Pennsylvania attacked immediately? You weren't in the what they call Battleship Row, were you?
No.
You were back around on another side of the island.
We were on the exit and entrance side coming in. It was a big dry dock, and that's where we were, number 1 dry dock.
Mr. Greenup, over in Schofield Barracks, could you hear the explosions and the fighting going on over at Pearl Harbor itself, or were you so busy over there with a wave of attacks that came in there that?
Well, we heard the explosions and didn't know what they were at the time, and then when the barracks or the area was machine gunned, we darn well knew then that someone was attacking us, and of course it had to be the Japs. And as I say, we just went to our assigned stations, which, by the way, in October or November of '41, the United States had frozen the assets of the Japanese, and we were put on anti-sabotage alert in the Hawaiian Islands. And I'd like to mention that we did not find any espionage done.
Now, you mentioned that, and I think that's an important point as far as Pearl Harbor is concerned. Mr. Butterworth, Mr. Johnson, any of you folks that were there at Pearl Harbor, Mr. Hall, had there been any real warning ahead of time from the American military people that say, be on the alert, perhaps an attack is imminent, or were you pretty well just caught like sitting ducks out there?
No, there was a rumor floating down from the headquarters from our officers aboard ship, and it stated that we would be at war with Japan, but it would be in the middle of the year, sometime around April, they figured. Now, that was just a rumor, but that was all over the battleship Pennsylvania.
Oh, that would have been a good place to pick up rumors, being the flagship, wouldn't it?
Sure would.
With the commander ship there. Mr. Greenup, you wanted to comment on that.
On the night of December 6th, I had gone to Honolulu, and I was going to stay at the Army Navy YMCA that night, but they were full. And so I got back on and a sampan, they called them, the 12-passenger touring cars. And lo and behold, the other 10, there were 11 of us, 10 of them were from the Hawaiian National Guard, and they were all Japanese.
There I am in that boat.
You were in the boat there that we just saw? That was a rescue operation.
What we had done had just picked up a yard bird. See, when the war started and the attack was over with, they wanted boats to pick up rescue people. So I didn't volunteer, but I was given a rifle. Me and a gunner's mate, third-class gunner's mate, were the 2 armed men in the boat. And on the way out, this yard bird wanted to go to the Oklahoma, and we took him to the Oklahoma, and that was the boat we just saw.
Well, now, the attack was over when you went
That
out
was just
in
a
those
few
rescue
minutes.
boats.
Just a few minutes after the war was started. I mean, after the attack was over. That was around 10 o'clock in the morning.
And of course, here we're looking at a shot back in the United States as news of the bombing came about. Mr. Hall, we hear that even though the Japanese aircraft did not attack Honolulu itself, that there was some substantial damage in the city, mainly from shrapnel from our own anti-aircraft fire. Did any of that affect you over there in your anti-aircraft post?
Yes, I'm satisfied. I heard later that maybe the gun crews were all shot down but one man on some of those ships. And one man tried to fire a big gun, and he couldn't do it. And I'm satisfied their own artillery hit one of our barracks, I mean, from the ship. And I understand that I saw some places with damage for approximately 60 people, civilians killed in Honolulu, and that must have been from our own fire.
May I comment on that?
Yeah, I was going to ask you now, you wouldn't normally think a survey ship would be armed, but your ship fired some of the first shots of that battle, did it not? And let's take a look at the Sumner. We got a picture of it here while you're telling us about it.
Well, I'd like to comment that on the firing or the shelling that occurred in downtown Honolulu. From information that we got, and I have notes in this little ship's book here, along with some notations from the ship's log, that some of those were from a 5-inch gun on the USS Castor, which was an ammunition ship that came in the night before, or the day before, and she was tied up across the dock from us. But we were on our way to Cavite in the Philippines to do some survey work south of the Philippines and the Dutch East Indies, I believe it was. And this was a question that came up. We were held over. We were only supposed to provision and fuel and get on, report to the command and get underway. And we got in about 23rd or 24th of November. And we were still there on the, of course, on December the 7th. And we wondered why we were held over. So after the fact, we decided that they knew, as Butterworth stated, that something was going to happen. They was uneasy about sending us out as unprotected as we was.
It's been the luckiest thing that would have happened to you if they'd sent you out.
It sure would. But referring to the armament, we had a 1917 5-inch on the stern, which did the most of our firing, and then we had some old 3-inch. Had 2 of them up forward and 2 was aft. The rest of it was small machine guns, and it just happened that our right at 8 o'clock, our crew, the only open deck area there was, they were lounging around after having breakfast, and most of the gun crew was there available as soon as general quarters was sounded. And the gun captain of that gun that fired, that knocked down the first plane, which has been confirmed by the Navy, is from North Georgia. But he was the one that gave the order to fire. I thought it might be interesting that he was a Georgia boy.
Yes, sir. All right, let's take a break here, then we'll return with our discussion of Pearl Harbor and the Middle Georgians who were there. Okay, and we're talking about the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor, which was 50 years ago today. Mr. Butterworth, you were aboard, as we mentioned, the flagship battleship Pennsylvania. And the Pennsylvania started firing immediately after that attack, did they not?
That's correct. We were the first gun to fire at Pearl Harbor. And it was on the mainmast of our ship, and it was a 50 caliber machine gun. And like I say, I have 2 of the shells that were fired that day.
Well, now, were you up on deck during most of this attack?
No, not during the attack. I was down on the 3rd deck in Repair 5.
Could you hear the attack going on
Very
down
well.
there?
You could hear the guns. They were vibrating all over the ship. The big guns, the 5-inch 25. No, we had 5-inch 38s and 5-inch 51s and 50 caliber.
I would imagine the most spectacular part of that entire attack would have been when the Arizona exploded.
It would have been for people on top side, but for me it was when we got our bomb hit.
Mr. Greenup, you were over at Schofield Barracks, and you mentioned before that you could hear the explosions and so forth over there. How many casualties were there at Schofield? Did you lose many people over there?
There were some casualties. I don't know the exact number, but if anyone has seen the movie From Here to Eternity, it's about the best authentic movie or reconstruction of life in Schofield and the attack, especially the segment that they put in there of Burt Lancaster going up on the roof of the barracks with a machine gun and firing at the planes and hitting one.
There are reports that I've read on Pearl Harbor that a lot of these guns you didn't even. Let's identify what we're looking at now. This is the Japanese news video combat film version of their attack on Pearl Harbor. It shows the Japanese fleet preparing to launch the aircraft, and then there'll be some aerial shots made over Pearl Harbor that we might identify some of these ships and so forth in. I was about to say, though, talking about Schofield Barracks, that some of the reports I've read on Pearl Harbor were that some of these guns you didn't even have mounts for. They were propping them on truck beds and whatever they could prop them on, or just holding them in their hands to fire back at these Japanese planes that were attacking.
That's true. However, since I was in Regimental Headquarters Company and assigned a weapons carrier, we had our 30 caliber machine gun on the weapons carrier, and of course it wasn't on all the time, it was in the storage, but when we ran out to our assigned stations at the motor pool, we got the machine gun and put it on, loaded it, and by that time there was nothing to fire.
Now, of course, we're looking at some rather shaky footage from some of the Japanese attack aircraft. That looks like Pearl Harbor itself there with some of the ships burning. Mr. Butterworth, despite all of this, what appeared to be devastating damage there at Pearl Harbor, I think it finally came out that the Arizona, Oklahoma, and Utah, which was an old target ship anyway, were the only ships that were permanently sunk. That all of these other ships, including the Pennsylvania, which you were aboard, were repaired and put back in service later on in the war.
The Pennsylvania did go back into battle, and she wrote history. She fired more shells than any other ship afloat at more targets. Really wrote a history. She was in 13 engagements, I believe it was.
There was another interesting bit of information on Pearl Harbor as I was reading up to do this program, and that is that of every single ship that was in that Japanese fleet was later sunk by the American military as the war progressed.
That's correct. And then not only that, but the man that led the attack was also, they got him too.
Since the war has been over, there's been a lot of speculation whether or not this was a, quote, sneak attack. That's what it was referred to during the war. There's some Japanese historians now that are saying that, that they had formally declared war on the United States, and that the message had been sent to Washington, but it had been lost in the translations and the red tape of military channels. Do you put any stock in that? Well, let's ask Mr. Johnson.
No, I do not. The main reason I was suspicious along over the years, but I wish I had brought the name of the book. There has been a book that was published a number of years ago. My daughter bought it, had made a trip to Pearl Harbor into the Arizona Memorial, and there she bought this book. It's Pearl Harbor Verdict of, I don't remember, instead of being a story, it bounces back and forth, incidents in congressional investigation, various things from other rumors, and this gentleman has disproved all of the allegations and suspicions, in my opinion. There were a lot of things happen. They knew something was going to happen, as he said, but the time element and so forth, I think, was off as far as picking that date.
Okay, let's take another break here, then we'll return with our discussion of Pearl Harbor. Okay, and we're discussing the attack on Pearl Harbor 50 years ago with 5 veterans of that Pearl Harbor attack. And before we completely run out of time, I'd just like to ask each one of you gentlemen, the latest information we have on the news wires is that the Japanese government has abandoned any plans to issue a formal apology to the United States for the attack. Now, they may do it later on, but it won't be done on December the 7th. It won't be done today. And also we hear that, well, Pearl Harbor was 50 years ago. Japan is one of our best allies now, one of our best friends in the business world. We should forget Pearl Harbor and move on. And I'd like to get each of you's reaction to that as briefly as we can, and let's start with Mr. Hart down there. Should we forget Pearl Harbor, let bygones be bygones?
No, don't turn your back on them, because The Japs coming back in here on us if we don't wash them.
So we got to stay alert. How do you
Yes,
feel
sir.
about that, Mr. Hall?
Well, I wouldn't trust them part if it was building because they hit Russia in 1904 without a warning. They hit China without a warning. They hit us in 41 without a warning. So
Don't let your guard down.
that's right. You can't sell them short. They might try it again someday.
Mr. Johnson.
I say we should not leave our guard down. If we had, we would have already been attacked by Russia. I think our alertness, our preparedness from the slogan, Remember Pearl Harbor, has maintained a military readiness enough to prevent the Russians from attacking us, and I think we should continue to do so.
Mr. Hall, how do you feel? I'm sorry, Mr. Greenup.
Well, I feel that we shouldn't let our guard down, remember Pearl Harbor, but as far as expecting them to apologize, I don't think they'll ever do that.
Mr. Butterworth.
I don't care if they apologize or don't. I had a good buddy that died in my arms, and I've handled about 400 dead and dying people I'll never forget.
Thank you, gentlemen, for being with us today to discuss Pearl Harbor. Next week on Close Up, we'll talk with Macon's newly installed mayor, Tommy Olmsted, about the challenges his administration faces in the next 4 years. Please join us.